What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. And day 6 of training camp is in the books for the Jets, and it featured a ton of roster movement, tinkering around with the bottom of the roster, in addition to making some changes with the kicking competition for the Jets this offseason. So one of the signings I'm going to break down in some detail in a separate video here, but we did add a running back in Lawrence Toafili, a Florida State running back that played for 5 years there. He actually was at Jets rookie minicamp as a tryout as well. And I believe he was one of the only players to have a receiving and rushing touchdown of over 70 yards in the same game. So there's a level of explosiveness to his game. He's coming in around 5'9", and I think he's tipping the scales at about 211-ish pounds. So kind of that fire hydrant type build. But it's interesting to see how he fits. He's going to replace, I believe it was Zach Evans, who kind of announced a surprise retirement, being a younger guy at 24. But we'll see how this pans out. Essentially just making sure that we can get all of the reps out there throughout training camp. Then when it comes to the kicking competition, we ended up cutting Caden Davis, and so that left us with Harrison Melvis, aka the thicker kicker, to battle the new kicker we signed, which is really a former teammate that we're all familiar with, in Nick Folk, aka the Folk Hero. And while this doesn't fit the mold of the young player youth movement that we've been on here, Nick Folk is a huge signing, right? There's a huge risk reward with this. One, you can look at this in the same vein as Greg Zuerlein, where you have an extremely old prospect. At kicker, you can age as gracefully as you tend to take care of your body. And so there's the opportunity for longevity there and, playing 15 plus years. But once you start hitting 40, you could wake up in the morning, sneeze the wrong way, turn the wrong way, and it can all be a wrap for you. So assuming that he wins the competition, right, this will be a situation where you have to have his health management at a premium throughout the course of the season to make sure that we don't see a drop off in talent for him. But it is a big signing, right? He led the NFL in field goal percentage in the last 2 years, back-to-back seasons, and you don't just do that by happen chance, right? There was an opening with Justin Tucker having some issues, a couple uncommon shanks and stuff like that were happening in the season, and Nick Folk essentially filled that void. And realistically, since we released him back in 2016, I think it was, he's had himself really a marked improvement, right? A stretch of years, what are we talking about, 6-7-ish years now, where he's really been just a consistent stock-up candidate, and especially over the last back-to-back year, really just an icon of consistency at the kicking competition. So great addition here. I would imagine that he's going to be the leading candidate to win the job just based off his recent resume, but we'll see how things go. And then we signed ourselves an offensive lineman from the UFL in a right guard, Liam Fornadell, while we cut center Gus Hartwig, who had went down with, I believe they ended up labeling it some kind of knee injury. So we'll see what happens here. Bear with me, by the way, too. The allergies have been murking me all day. But we'll see what happens there with him, right? I want to imagine that we probably lead or near the top of the league when it comes to picking up these XFL, UFL type guys and still having them stick around, whether that's practice squad, roster, whatever the situation is. But he's going to be my breakout player that I do in terms of having a separate video to cover why he's such a awesome signing here. But much like why I liked Cole Lavallo and what I did on that breakdown, you can essentially not really, but you can copy and paste the feeling when we're talking about our new guard here. So stay tuned for that. When it comes to the practice itself, Now, injury-wise, we did hold out Braylon Allen. AG said it was essentially a sore knee. They wanted to give him additional recovery time. No reason to risk anything here. And so they took that precaution. But ultimately, it was a defensive dominant day. We heard AG pretty much mention the same thing, and it was all three levels. I mean, the linebackers were running and hitting. The defensive line was stout at the point of attack. It felt like everybody was winning their one-on-ones. And even the secondary in itself, they were making plays left, right, center. It was really a struggle for the offense from essentially start to finish, but there was some good that did come from the offense at some point. So let's get into some of these specifics here. From Justin Fields' side, potentially the worst camp day that he's had so far for practice. Multiple issues where he was forced to run. And so as a whole, the offensive line seemed like they took a significant step back, where in almost every practice, you could highlight the fact that they've been able to create holes and movement in the run game, and they were holding up in pass protection. That didn't seem to be the case today. And even with Justin Fields operating out of the, steel toe type situation they created to protect the foot, it wasn't necessarily due to lack of mobility or anything like that. It's just guys were clearly and cleanly getting beaten by the defensive line, and it forced Justin to have to make some plays on the run. And maybe this is where we're still seeing some adjustments in this game, because when he did get forced out of the pocket, multiple late passes, multiple passes where it wasn't in the most accurate place to help out the receiver trying to catch the ball. So, imagine throws being just slightly behind you, throws where you have to kind of go, below the hamstring and stuff to reach down and try to catch. Really just overall not great. But there was some redemption for him, because he did, in the 2-minute drill to end practice, have probably his best session of the practice, and was able to hit guys. Multiple big play to Alan Lazard. Mason Taylor caught a touchdown, for example, and he was able to connect with Garrett Wilson, of course, to make some things happen. So the resiliency is what you're going to imagine Aaron Glenn keys in on, and ultimately it's been the staple of any great player, right? When we haven't performed well as a unit, right, on one side of the ball or the other, there's been players that have been able to step up and make the plays that were necessary to allow us to walk away with a W. So there's at least a confidence booster in the fact that Justin Fields found a way to get it done for what that specific situation called for, and you imagine that can translate to game day. Arian Smith, he had a drop, one of the first days where I've really seen this called out in maybe at least the last week or two, of course accounting for the time as well with him being off during OTAs. Mason Taylor also had a drop, and this was one of those situations where you want to see him catch it, but also was one of those errant throws that was a little behind for Mason Taylor in this situation. But as called out, he was on the receiving end of the 2-minute drill, where it looks like, as advertised in his college days, he was able to find a soft spot in zone coverage and give Justin Fields the opportunity to make a play out there. Quincy, if we want to stick with the offense, as mentioned, Alan Lazard, pretty solid day. Drops across the board really for everybody. Josh Reynolds had a couple big plays that was out there. But switching over to the defense, Quincy, open space, strong form tackling. I've seen this play called out by multiple reporters. And it was one where really he was just able to, I believe, attack the flats with a hurry. But covering Mason Taylor, Justin Fields being flushed out the pocket, and really we shouldn't be surprised by the athleticism that Quincy Williams offers at this point, but it still feels like there's plays that you wouldn't expect 90% of the league to make that Quincy's able to make happen. And so with all of the different things he's going to be asked to do from this defense this year, the blitzing, as well as different coverage opportunities and stuff like that, it really seems like he's taken to it. And also the mindset, right? I remember posting something in my community chat where he mentioned he'll die before another family eats before his, or something along that line. So he's tapped in, and he's operating at another level so far in training camp. His brother Quinnen also made it an extremely difficult day for the offensive line. Had a tackle for loss, was very strong at the point of attack and just whipping guys all over the place, and essentially really just living in the backfield and creating a ton of disruption. And then in the secondary, Brandon Stevens, another pretty solid day in terms of being able to work against Garrett Wilson. Now, there was a defensive pass interference that he had on a play where he had pretty tight coverage, and I think Robbie Sabo called out the fact that the flag may have really only been thrown because he might have held the hip too long, or maybe the arm, something to that effect. But that also goes into the category of what Aaron Glenn meant for competitive flags, where he can kind of live and die by some of those, and some will come our way, some won't. So overall, interesting day just because it's been so one-sided. And I don't remember which article I saw, but they equated it to watching like one of the all-time, Ravens or Chicago Bears defenses, where an offense really just can't produce any kind of answer, and almost every play that gets walked out is either going to be a net negative situation, or it's going to be one where they didn't gain positive yardage like at all. So one of those situations for the most part. Obviously, that's a pretty big comp, and we don't expect to really see that throughout the course of the entire offseason. But when this was an example of when the lights are clicking, when the bulb is on for the entire defense, it still looks like it's going to be a very, very scary defense for the league to have to deal with. So let me know what you guys think. Of course, add whatever commentary you have as always, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.